In the sands of ancient Makkah, one man's name struck fear into the hearts of early Muslims: Abu Jahal, the father of ignorance. His cruelty knew no bounds, and his hatred for the Prophet Muhammad led him to commit unspeakable acts. But who was this man? And why does his legacy as a symbol of oppression still echo through history? In this video, we'll dive into the chilling details of Abu Jahl's rise to power, the brutal methods he used to crush the early Muslims, and his pivotal role in the Battle of Badr, which ultimately sealed his fate. From the tragic story of Islam's first martyrs to his relentless persecution of the Prophet's followers, we'll explore the depths of his cruelty and its far-reaching impact. But this story is more than just the tale of one man's evil. It's a powerful reminder of the resilience of faith, the triumph of justice, and the enduring power of truth. Stay with us as we uncover the dark legacy of Abu Jahl and the lessons it holds for us today. As the dawn of Islam began to spread its light across the Arabian Peninsula, a figure loomed large in the shadow, a figure known to many as Abu Jahl. But before he earned this infamous title, he was born as Amr ibn Hisham, a name that would one day be forgotten in the sands of time, replaced by a legacy of relentless opposition to the truth. Amr ibn Hisham was born into the revered tribe of Quraysh, the guardians of the Kaaba and the most powerful clan in Mecca. His family, the Banu Makhzum, was one of the wealthiest and most influential in the city. From the moment he opened his eyes to the world, Amr was destined for greatness, surrounded by the luxuries of Meccan life and the unshakable traditions of his ancestors. Yet this wasn't just a life of privilege. Amr's upbringing was steeped in the warrior culture of the desert. As a young boy, he was trained in the art of war, mastering the sword and spear with a ferocity that earned him respect and fear among his peers. But beyond the battlefield, Amr's mind was sharp and calculating. He wasn't content with merely being a warrior. He aspired to wield true power, the kind of power that could shape the fate of Mecca itself. As he matured, Amr's ambitions extended beyond the physical. He became deeply involved in the political landscape of Mecca, observing the delicate balance of power that held the city together. He was a keen strategist, always one step ahead, always ready to seize an opportunity. But beneath this outward strength lay a deep-seated fear, a fear that the traditions he held so dear might one day be challenged. Amr's interactions with Jewish and Christian scholars only intensified this fear. While he was curious about their monotheistic beliefs, he viewed them as a threat to the polytheistic traditions of the Quraysh. The idea of worshiping one God alone was an affront to everything he believed in, and it fueled a growing animosity within him, a hatred that would soon find its target. By the time Amr reached adulthood, his name was already synonymous with authority and influence in Mecca. He was a fierce defender of the idols of the Kaaba, believing that they were the cornerstone of the Quraysh's power. But as whispers of a new prophet began to circulate, Amr's fear turned to anger, and his anger to hatred. Little did he know this hatred would consume him, transforming him into the man history would remember as Abu Jahal, the father of ignorance. His rise to power was marked by a ruthless determination to crush anything and anyone that threatened the old ways, especially the man who claimed to be the messenger of Allah, Muhammad, PBUH. Abu Jahl is famously quoted as saying, "Muhammad has cursed our gods and insulted our ancestors. He has divided our people, and his teachings threaten our way of life. As long as I breathe, I will fight him and his followers with all my might." This unrelenting animosity toward Islam wasn't just about preserving tradition. It was a personal crusade against a religion that he believed would dismantle the very foundations of Mecca's power. Amr's leadership was solidified by his ruthless ability to maintain the status quo, ensuring that the idols of the Kaaba remained the central figures of worship. His hatred for Islam was rooted in more than just religious differences. It was a direct threat to the very power he sought to preserve. The monotheistic message of Islam, which called for the worship of one God and the rejection of idols, was an existential threat to the social, economic, and religious fabric of Meccan society, which Amr, now known as Abu Jahl, had sworn to protect. Abu Jahl's cruelty was unmatched in the early days of Islam. His reputation as a merciless tyrant was built on the backs of those who dared to embrace the new faith, and his methods were as brutal as they were calculated. One of Abu Jahl's earliest and most infamous victims was Sumayya bint Khayyat, a slave who, despite her lowly status, found solace and truth in Islam. Her conversion did not go unnoticed. Abu Jahl, always on the lookout for signs of dissent, quickly learned of her and her family's decision to follow the Prophet Muhammad. To him, this was more than a religious shift. It was a challenge to his authority. Confronting Sumayya in the streets of Mecca, Abu Jahl's eyes burned with anger. "You follow Muhammad?" he spat, his voice thick with disdain. Sumayya, though small in stature, stood tall in her faith. "I follow the truth," she declared, her voice unwavering. This defiance was intolerable to Abu Jahl. He ordered Sumayya to be bound and dragged into the public square where he intended to make an example of her. Before a gathering crowd, he demanded that she renounce Islam. But Sumayya, with iron resolve, refused. Enraged, Abu Jahl's response was swift and brutal. He commanded his men to torture her mercilessly. The crowd watched in silent horror as she was beaten and whipped, her frail body enduring unimaginable pain. Yet, she did not waver. Abu Jahl, in a final act of barbarity, drew his spear and, with a cold smile, drove it into her abdomen. "This is the fate of those who defy me," he proclaimed as her blood soaked the ground. Sumayya became the first martyr of Islam, her death a symbol of the strength and sacrifice that would define the early Muslim community. The story of Sumayya cannot be told without mentioning her husband, Yasir, who also suffered under Abu Jahl's hand. Yasir was an old man, frail but firm in his belief. Abu Jahl saw in him an easy target, a way to break Sumayya's spirit by torturing her loved one. Abu Jahl ordered Yasir to be tortured in front of his wife, hoping to crush their will together. Yasir endured the torment with silent dignity, refusing to renounce his faith. His death was slow and agonizing, each breath a struggle, each moment a testament to his unwavering belief in the truth of Islam. Yasir died in chains, but his spirit, like Sumayya's, lived on, inspiring the Muslim community to remain steadfast in their faith. Bilal ibn Rabah, a former Ethiopian slave, was another target of Abu Jahl's wrath. When his master Umayyah ibn Khalaf discovered Bilal's conversion to Islam, he subjected him to horrific torture, often at Abu Jahl's urging. Abu Jahl saw Bilal's defiance as a personal affront. He ordered Bilal to be dragged into the scorching desert, where he was stripped and laid on the burning sand. Abu Jahl himself placed a massive boulder on Bilal's chest, pressing down with the weight of cruelty. "Renounce your faith, Bilal," he demanded, his voice dripping with malice. But Bilal's response was resolute. "Ahad, Ahad, God is one." This defiance only fueled Abu Jahl's anger. He ordered Bilal to be dragged through the streets of Mecca, his body scraping against the rough stones, leaving trails of blood. Yet Bilal's spirit remained unbroken. His cries of "Ahad, Ahad" echoed through the city, a testament to his unshakable faith. Abu Jahl, frustrated by Bilal's resilience, could only watch as his attempts to crush the man's spirit failed. Bilal was later rescued, but that is a story for another day. Lubayna, another early convert, also felt the wrath of Abu Jahl. When he discovered her newfound faith, he confronted her with the same ferocity he had shown others. "You dare follow Muhammad?" he snarled, his voice full of contempt. Lubayna, though terrified, did not deny her faith. "I have found the truth," she said simply. In a fit of rage, Abu Jahl struck her down and ordered his men to hold her still. With cold precision, he blinded her in one eye, leaving her in excruciating pain. "This is what happens to those who defy me," he declared, his voice devoid of any mercy. Despite the brutality, Lubayna's faith did not falter. Her suffering became yet another testament to the strength of the early Muslims. Abu Jahl's brutality, rather than quelling the Muslim spirit, only served to strengthen it. The stories of Sumayya, Yasir, Bilal, and Lubayna became rallying cries for the early Muslim community. Their suffering was not in vain. It laid the foundation for a faith that would endure and flourish. Abu Jahl's relentless persecution of the early Muslims forced many of them to seek refuge elsewhere. Under the constant threat of torture and death, the Prophet Muhammad instructed his followers to migrate to Medina, a city that welcomed them with open arms. This migration, known as the Hijra, was a turning point for the Muslim community. Despite the distance, Abu Jahl's hatred did not wane. He viewed the establishment of a Muslim community in Medina as an existential threat to Meccan dominance. He and other Quraysh leaders saw Islam's growing influence as a direct challenge to their power and the economic stability of Mecca, which relied heavily on the pagan traditions tied to the Kaaba. Abu Jahl's fury intensified as the Muslims in Medina began to thrive under the leadership of the Prophet. Determined to crush this new Muslim state, Abu Jahl spearheaded efforts to disrupt the Muslims' trade routes and organized a series of raids against them. The tension between Mecca and Medina grew, inching closer to an inevitable confrontation. Abu Jahl's arrogance led him to believe that the Quraysh's military might would easily overwhelm the Muslims, and he became increasingly vocal in his calls for war. The tipping point came when news reached Medina that a large Quraysh caravan, laden with wealth, was returning from Syria under the leadership of Abu Sufyan, another staunch enemy of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, seeing an opportunity to weaken the Quraysh economically, decided to intercept the caravan. However, Abu Sufyan, ever cautious, managed to evade the Muslim force and called for reinforcements from Mecca. Abu Jahal, seizing the moment, rallied the Quraysh forces. Confident in their superior numbers and experience, he declared that they would march to Badr, a strategic location between Mecca and Medina, to deliver a crushing blow to the Muslims. Abu Jahl's arrogance was on full display as he boasted to the Quraysh, "We will wipe out Muhammad and his followers once and for all." The Quraysh army, over 1,000 strong, vastly outnumbered the Muslim force of around 300. Abu Jahl, leading the charge, was certain of victory. He viewed this as not just a battle, but as a final opportunity to eradicate Islam and restore the Quraysh's uncontested dominance over Arabia. The two armies met at Badr, and the tension was palpable. For the Muslims, this was more than just a battle, it was a fight for survival. They were outnumbered and outmatched, but their faith in Allah and the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, filled them with a determination that the Quraysh did not anticipate. As the battle commenced, the Muslims fought with a ferocity that stunned the Quraysh. Despite their smaller numbers, they managed to hold their ground. Abu Jahl, however, remained confident. He moved through the ranks, urging his warriors on, shouting, "Victory is ours! Show no mercy to Muhammad and his followers." But as the battle raged on, the tide began to turn. The Muslims, driven by their faith and the desire to protect their new community in Medina, began to overpower the Quraysh forces. Abu Jahl, now seeing his forces faltering, refused to retreat. His pride and hatred blinded him to the reality of the situation. In the midst of the chaos, two young Muslims, Mu'ad and Mu'awid, spotted Abu Jahl. They had heard of his cruelty, of the torment he had inflicted on their brothers and sisters in Mecca. With a shared resolve, they charged at him. Their attack was swift and precise, striking Abu Jahl down. As he fell, wounded and struggling to breathe, the weight of his failures began to sink in. Lying on the battlefield, Abu Jahl's life ebbed away. According to historical accounts, as he gasped for his final breaths, he was confronted by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, a companion of the Prophet. Ibn Mas'ud, recognizing the fallen tyrant, stood over him. "Are you Abu Jahl?" he asked. Abu Jahl, still defiant even in the face of death, replied, "Is there any man greater than I?" But his bravado could not mask the reality. His reign of terror was over. With a swift strike, Ibn Mas'ud ended the life of the man who had brought so much pain and suffering to the early Muslims. As the dust settled on the battlefield, the significance of the moment became clear. The death of Abu Jahl marked not just the end of a tyrant, but a turning point in the history of Islam. The Quraysh, once so confident in their power, had been dealt a devastating blow. The Muslims, though fewer in number, had triumphed through their faith and perseverance. The Prophet Muhammad later approached the body of Abu Jahl and remarked, "This is the Pharaoh of this nation." Just as Pharaoh had opposed Moses and been defeated, so too had Abu Jahl met his end in defiance of the truth. The death of Abu Jahl was a significant moment for the Muslim community. It symbolized the end of the old order, the beginning of a new era where Islam would no longer be confined to the shadows, but would rise to prominence in the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. The Battle of Badr became a symbol of divine support for the Muslims, reinforcing their belief that Allah was with them in their struggle. For the Quraysh, the loss of their most feared and respected leader was a crushing blow. Abu Jahl's death was the beginning of the end for the old Meccan order. Without his ruthless leadership, the Quraysh would struggle to maintain their grip on power, and the tide of Islam would continue to rise. Abu Jahl's life and death offer powerful lessons. His story is a stark reminder of the dangers of arrogance and the consequences of opposing the truth. His refusal to accept the message of Islam, his persecution of the innocent, and his ultimate downfall all serve as warnings about the perils of pride and the futility bravery of standing against the will of Allah. For the Muslims, the Battle of Badr and the death of Abu Jahal underscored the importance of faith, unity, and resilience. It taught them that no matter how powerful the enemy, victory is assured when one stands firm in the truth. Abu Jahl's legacy is not one of strength, but of the ultimate triumph of justice over tyranny. Let me ask you, what do you think is the most important lesson we can learn from Abu Jahl's life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights could be valuable for others who are reflecting on this story. And remember, less than 1% of you who watch these videos are actually subscribed to the channel. If you found value in this story and want to learn more about the figures who shaped history, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Together we can explore more timeless tales and uncover the lessons they hold.